Shalom and welcome to TBN Israel, the podcast. And first of all, Mati, it's great to be here after a very long time in the United States.
Welcome back.
Nothing beats being at home here in the studio with you.
The peace and quiet of Israel.
Yeah, and
welcome back.
Yeah, so now that I'm here, Iran can attack us officially.
We've been waiting for a long time.
They've been waiting.
Today on the podcast, we're tackling some very, very deep questions.
Mm-hmm.
Has Hamas fallen or not?
Yes. What's left of this terrorist organization in the Gaza Strip?
Yeah.
And a little bit also about the negotiations to release the Israeli hostages. Where are we standing? What are the obstacles? And if there is hope to see them home anytime soon.
Well, there's always hope.
Yeah.
But what will happen?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And how many and who? That's the questions that we need to discuss today.
We're in an odd season right now. And I say this even on a personal level, where usually the news are, not usually, oftentimes for the last year or so, the news is linear. You know what's happening and it moves in this direction. And we've been sitting in limbo for what has it been, 3 weeks, waiting for the Iranians to attack, waiting for a hostage deal to work out. And the news is always going back and forth between, now the Americans have stepped in, it's about to happen. Here, Hamas has said, and then suddenly, a week has gone by, nothing's happened.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've just been in this place of uncertainty and unclarity. And meanwhile, life hasn't stopped. Israel's still fighting, the Israeli IDF is fighting inside the Gaza Strip.
Yeah.
Israel is attacking in northern Israel on a nightly basis more than we have at any different season of this war.
In Lebanon,
yeah. In Lebanon, farther deeper than we've done before.
Yeah, we just attacked them about, 50 kilometers into Lebanon?
It was 100 kilometers.
Yeah, destroying weapon stockpiles, and you saw the secondary explosions, on all videos in social media and everywhere, basically. So this war keeps on going, but when you're outside of Israel, this is something I felt, it's only people think that we're under attack when the headlines, are showing.
It's a daily basis.
So, but I keep telling the people that ask me, no, Israel is at war with Hezbollah since October 8th. Okay, so they threatened a more severe attack, but a few days ago they launched
on a daily basis.
50 rockets and drones at Israeli cities.
Look, we were, what was it, a couple days ago, I was up north in Kiryat Shmona, sort of on the northern border. And it's a daily event there. Last night, 4 rockets fell and burned down the bank in the city. Today, when the day we were there were intercepts over our head. It doesn't even it barely makes the news in Israel.
Yeah.
It's a sub headline that says, this has been going on.
Yeah, and talking about the Gaza Strip, every day you have soldiers that die fighting terrorists in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah.
And these are
tunnels uncovered and blown up. And it's an ongoing campaign that is quite deep in its nature. A substantial amount of armored vehicles, substantial amount of engineering vehicles, a good amount of soldiers that are fighting on a daily basis against Hamas. But yesterday, or just a couple of days ago, there was finally a real headline of change. Yoav Gallant, our Minister of Defense, comes up publicly and says, the Rafah brigade, or the rafah, in English, brigade of, no, not brigade. Yeah, brigade.
Yeah, battalion, brigade.
No, brigade, yeah. Khativa brigade has been dismantled, and they no longer exist. And they were the last standing brigade, according to the IDF.
Yes.
So that's a big headline where the Israeli Ministry of Defense says, well, we've been fighting for a while, and the last big it doesn't mean there aren't other fighters. The last organized unit that was fighting is no longer with us. Yeah. Which is sort of a headline saying, look, we're
close to ending this terrorist organization.
We're wrapping things up, guys. Let's move on.
Yeah, it's time to move on, definitely. But when the IDF is declaring that a brigade is dismantled, that means that, I don't remember the percentages exactly, but around 75% of that brigade cannot function anymore. Yeah. Meaning either 75% of the soldiers were neutralized, or 75% of the command structure was neutralized. It doesn't mean that 100% of the terrorists were annihilated. It's a certain percentage, then above that, this brigade becomes just a bunch of terrorists that are doing whatever they want in certain
roaming
places.
The terrain, yeah.
Exactly. So there are certain military levels, and that's why the IDF is stating that this brigade is dismantled, and not we have neutralized all the terrorists in Rafah, which that will kind of never be the case, because Hamas is still raising up new terrorists, 16-year-olds and others, in order to keep fighting Israel. Yeah. But I think that this means that this war in the Gaza Strip is definitely moving to the next stage of the IDF conducting tactical raids against terror cells like we do in Judea and Samaria.
Yeah.
And not an active war between military units, which was the beginning of this war.
And I think that's really the general feeling. Our question today is, has Hamas fallen? It's not like there are going to be no more Hamas combatives whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's, have we moved sort of to the last phase of this war? And when you've been following the headlines, and it's just happened the last couple of days, where you'll see, for instance, an Egyptian high-ranking official say, Yahya Sinwar, the last standing leader of Hamas, is asking for guarantees that he won't be killed at the end of this conflict.
Yeah, I don't think nobody will guarantee that to him.
Yeah, and whether or not, you also don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah.
But it is the kind of sort of press release that indicates that everyone is pushing towards an end game. Mm-hmm. And to step back a bit, we've talked about this over recent weeks. The clock is running out on this entire thing. It's running out in the sense that the U.S. is going to elections, and President Biden and VP Harris, they want something to be able to show and say, look, we did everything we can, here's some kind of achievement. Mm-hmm. And the same goes for the Israeli government. The Israeli government is facing incredible internal pressure on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. There are demonstrations in Israel by Israeli citizens against the government on a weekly basis throughout the country.
Yeah.
Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, has lost a lot of his support internally in Israel for people calling for or his replacement or for change of tactics. Internal criticism is rising. Financial criticism and financial pressure is rising. All of this is coming to the point where even our neighbors are starting to lose patience. And at the same time, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, the Iranians, who were threatening almost full-out war against Israel, said, okay, we're going to take a couple steps back and wait to see how this plays out. It feels like we're starting to see, I don't know about the end, but the next episode in the story.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Hamas has basically one option or one hope in order to survive this situation, and that's if Hezbollah and Iran and the Houthis and Iraqi militias in Iraq and Syria will launch a combined attack against Israel. And then the IDF will have to kind of withdraw from the Gaza Strip and focus on other fronts defending the country. That's, I think, the only situation that Sinwar and Hamas will come out of this kind of alive, and will have a bit of time to regroup and reorganize, restock themselves with weapons and ammunition and militants, basically.
But they haven't, and that's interesting.
Yeah, and they haven't. All these allies haven't united against Israel during this war with Hamas fully. They all
not in the way we were expecting them.
Yes. So so Hezbollah launched rockets every day, but it's all kind of from their border towards our border. There were a few attempts to penetrate Israel, but only number
Very
of
small
terrorists.
ones,
But if they would have joined full force together, the situation would be completely different.
Yeah.
And also the Iranian attacks were okay. So one time they directly launched attacks against us, but since then it was also only through proxies. Houthis only launched rockets at Israel, but nothing super significant. Just a amount of rockets. So I don't see a hopeful situation for Sinwar and for Hamas out of this. I mean, I think that their days are numbered, but it will take time to completely, clear up the Gaza Strip from any resistance.
Hey guys, if you've stuck around so far, it probably means you're enjoying the content. So make sure you subscribe and share this content. If you feel like it, and you should feel like it, also make a small donation or a big donation to keep things coming from Israel. We create a whole lot of content. We have an amazing team releasing content across many platforms on a daily basis, and we love staying in touch with you. I think it's a very interesting conversation altogether, because Hamas have, for the most part, achieved their goal. Their goal was to humiliate and put fear in the hearts of Israelis. Mm-hmm. And they were planning, and they hoped for, and they say this openly, want to have a strong imagery of that violence, that humiliation against Israel. And they had that on October 7th. But at the same time, they were also calling on other Arab nations to step in, and that happened to a limited degree. Mm-hmm. Hezbollah, limited degree, as you say. Iran, limited degree. And they've sort of run out of runway, so to speak, of where they're going to go next. Mm-hmm. Much of their fighting force has been eliminated as an organic fighting force with a command structure and communication lines and all of that. It's much more, we'll call it low-level terrorism than it is an actual fighting force. Yeah. And you can see that on I mean, if you follow the news of what's going on in Gaza, it's very, very clear on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And then the question is, where do they go next? And they've been, and this is where it gets interesting, we've been deep in negotiations about ending this phase of the conflict. One, two, releasing Israeli hostages that are held by Hamas.
Mm-hmm.
And Hamas, interestingly, have intentionally blown up every, no pun intended, every phase of this negotiation, even though the Americans sent in their special emissary, even though the Qataris are involved, even though the Egyptians are pushing, they've really intentionally sort of dragged their feet in going to any kind of negotiation.
They never came to the negotiations almost.
Yeah,
it's only through Egyptians, through Qataris. Yeah. Of course that their representatives are in Doha, in Qatar. Yeah. They live there. So it's not like they're not involved, but not directly. So it feels like they only are stalling in order to increase the international pressure on Israel to stop this war.
I mean, it's worked to a certain degree.
Yeah, definitely.
The pressure on Israel has been incredible. And aside from the U.S., who's just steadfastly stood by the side of Israel, almost without any exceptions whatsoever, be it Democratic or Republican, many of the European countries are turning against Israel.
Yeah.
The UN has a ever-increasing number of condemnations and calling for ceasefire and accusing Israel of different things and ignoring the violence that was inflicted on Israel. And we're feeling the tide turn against Israel on a diplomatic level.
Yeah.
And I think that has to be considered, has to be negotiated. It's a lot of pressure on our country. Our country is dependent on export. Our country is dependent on economic and cultural exchange with other countries. We don't live on our own, in this vast land. We have to engage with the world around us.
Yeah, moreover, I mean, we have so many people that are serving in the IDF instead of going and working.
Yeah.
And the government needs to pay their salaries. And all of the refugees that cannot live on the northern border with Lebanon or even with Syria because they are evacuated because of daily rocket fire on their houses. So they live in hotels with their families, and the government needs to pay them also for the living costs and also for not being able to work in their jobs. So it's very heavy on the economy. So this thing cannot go on any longer. But maybe we should just give a few updates on what Hamas wants to achieve from these negotiations, allegedly, and what Israel wants to achieve out of them. So Hamas wants, of course, the IDF to withdraw from the Gaza Strip completely. And the key points that they are talking about is that they want to have freedom of movement for Hamas terrorists from the southern part of the Gaza Strip into the northern part. And this is a big issue because we don't want Hamas to regroup and to reorganize. So the IDF wants to keep its presence in the middle of the Gaza Strip and to screen every person that moves from the southern part of the Gaza Strip into the northern part of Gaza. And then we can know if they're terrorists, we'll arrest them. And on the second part, it kind of makes sense, that Hamas wants the IDF to move out of the Philadelphia corridor, which is the only border not with Israel. So that's the border with Egypt, with the Sinai Peninsula. Okay? And they want also that either the Palestinian Authority or Hamas members will manage the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. Okay, it makes sense because they want to control it because we found 150 tunnels and destroyed them crossing this border. So that's their only way of getting weapons into the Gaza Strip. So they want to regain this ability and they want to be able to move these weapons and militants to the northern part of the Gaza Strip where it's closer to launch rockets towards Tel Aviv. So that's what Hamas wants.
And it gets worse. They want two more things that we can't give them. They want guarantees.
Yeah.
They want Israel to guarantee the duration of the ceasefire. And these agreements, and again, the legalese is quite long, but the general idea is quite clear. You go through phases, and in every phase, Israel, this is the request of Hamas, which Israel, for the most part, hasn't agreed to. Israel withdraws to certain lines. Hamas says withdraw completely from the Gaza Strip. Israel says, no, we'll allow you moving inside Gaza. We're keeping these corridors under our own control.
Yeah.
But then they're asking for a period of time. It's not just today. It's you have to guarantee that for X number of days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 100 days, between these phases, you don't engage with us which what it means in practicality, and you have to envision this from the sort of the eyes of the soldier in the field, is that IDF soldiers will have to sit on the borderlines,
watch terrorists
drive truckloads of ammunition and explosives and rockets back into areas that have already been fought over and cleared by the IDF, only to have to fight over them again. That's what it means.
Yeah.
And then the last part is, and I don't know, again, this is according to Egyptian sources, they're saying that Sinwar wants guarantees. And personally, Sinwar has always been the voice of martyrdom. He's always said, I will die for the cause.
Yeah, he's in the Gaza Strip, he's hiding with the terrorists, but now he says, okay, I want to survive this.
Yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And again, we don't know if he really said it or didn't.
True.
But according to very reliable sources on the Egyptian side, he's saying, I want to make sure that I survive. And another big part of that is, I don't want to be exiled. And that's sort of where the narrative gets interesting, because previously, in previous episodes of the Israeli conflict, Israeli-Palestinian relationship, we'll call it, and the Jordanian-Palestinian relationship, when the Palestinians lost in a phase of a conflict, the governing power, Jordanians, Israelis, said, thank you, we understood what your culture and what your leadership does. Pack up your bags.
Move to a different place.
Move to a different country.
And they did that.
Yeah, and Sinwar doesn't want that happening to him. He wants to retain control of the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, and that's a very bad situation. I mean, if they keep control, what will happen? Then 7 years from now,
same thing.
Yeah. They will regroup, they will reorganize, train new people, and then launch more attacks, because that's what they do.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to do also in Judea and Samaria, the Gaza Strip, and nothing will change. So that's the hard situation. And another thing is that Israel is demanding a list of names of Israeli hostages that Hamas has alive, and that they can, release them as part of this deal. And Hamas is refusing to give us this list.
Whatsoever.
Yeah, at all.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, how can we make a deal with you if you don't give us the names and you can tell us who's alive even? Yeah. So that's the...
we need to make a side note here and explain that for the Israeli public, the hostage situation is very, very, very serious.
Yeah.
There are demonstrations all the time in this country. There are signs on every bridge and every exit of a highway and on streets within the
airport.
cities.
I just arrived yesterday to the airport, and you have all the pictures of all the hostages on the way back to Israel.
Exactly. If there's anything that the Israeli public is unified about,
it
is bring our boys and girls back.
The question is, at what cost?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I know you're correct. But the general public isn't asking that question.
No, they just said, bring them back. We'll deal with the consequences later.
We don't care. Yeah. Bring them back.
Yeah.
Bring them back. And Prime Minister Netanyahu and his coalition and his government are taking an incredible amount of heat from the Israeli public on the question of what have you been doing to bring back the hostages. Immense pressure.
Yeah.
More than on any other topic that I can remember in recent years. And our government has to be able to show something for that. And when you bring all those lines of thought together, the American interest, Qataris, Egyptians, and the Israelis, everyone's pushing for have an agreement now while we can still get a substantial amount of them alive, because as time goes by, less of them will survive in Hamas captivity.
Yeah, definitely.
And then at the same time, we don't know what's going to happen in 3 months. Let's have some kind of interim deal now so we can move on to the next phase.
Yeah. And also, so what are the numbers? Now we have 109
maybe?
Yeah, 109 or something like that. A little more than 100 Israeli hostages in the Gaza Strip. And out of them, according to the latest update from the Israeli authorities, we have maybe 73 alive, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And the rest, they don't think that they're alive anymore. Mainly just bodies that Hamas is holding.
Well, there might have been bodies since October 7th.
Yes.
Or possibly kidnapped after they were killed in October 7th.
Yeah.
In some of the cases.
Yeah, there's no clarity on that issue.
Yeah. So, again, this is a huge pressure point. It's a huge pain point for the Israeli public, and Hamas they've been pressing that button as hard as they can to get the sentiment going. They're not giving any information to the Israeli public. They're not saying anything, and they're wholly uncooperative in the negotiation.
Yeah, but the hostages is the only reason that this war is taking so long, and the only way for Hamas leaders to still be alive. I mean, we would have been in a totally different war if there were no hostages in Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Yeah. I mean, in order to conduct an operation in an urban population area, underground tunnels, with hostages, it's like almost impossible for an IDF, for the army or any army to maneuver, to conduct a strike. You need to think that maybe we have hostages in that building, so I cannot launch an airstrike. And the terrorists know that. Like they know that we will not attack schools and humanitarian buildings, and that's why they fire from these places. They know that we will not kill our own hostages. That's why they keep the hostages with them in key places in the Gaza Strip. So that's like, anyway.
It's rough, and again, I can't emphasize enough, there's a hook in the public flesh of the Jewish people in this land that is emotionally tying us to the people captive in the Gaza Strip. And every man and woman in this country lives every day with a knowledge of what's going on there and the hope that those people are returned. And there's an enormous amount of pressure to wrap everything up. And we need to talk for a second about what's happened so far. The IDF, and we can't exaggerate in these numbers, the IDF has maneuvered through and cleared the majority of the entire Gaza Strip. And they've done something that is historically unparalleled. In a short amount of time, cleared a densely populated urban area, removing most of the terrorists with, and again, every human life is important, relatively speaking, low civilian and uninvolved casualties.
Yeah, I don't think that the world have seen anything like this. I mean, we notify an area before we conduct an operation or a maneuver in it. We make sure that there is a safe area for the population to move there. We create a corridor. When I say we, I mean the IDF and Israel creates a corridor that the humanitarian population can walk safely in order to reach the safe zone, protect them while they're doing that, because the terrorists are launching attacks against their own people, trying to make them stay in these areas. And then, only then when the population moved, we conduct our operations and root out these terror elements in that neighborhood. And then we bring the civilians back to that neighborhood and do the same thing in another location. And this is how this war has been going on. I mean, for 10 months now.
And that's a human level. Then the infrastructure is a whole different conversation. Where the IDF discovered, and we didn't know this, on the eve of this war, the IDF discovered as we progressed through the Gaza Strip that the Gaza Strip is not a city or a group of cities and buildings. What it is military and terrorist fortifications built in the civilian homes. And
underneath them.
And underneath them. Every house has a tunnel. Every house has a weapons stash. And again, the numbers are absurd.
The Palestinian dream. Every house has a tunnel and a rocket launcher from the balcony.
Exactly. Every kindergarten has weapons stashed in it. Every school has terrorists hiding in the tunnels underneath it. I mean, what the Gaza Strip was and is until it's cleared by the IDF is a hive and a hiding place for terrorism, weapons, and the people that use them. And the IDF had to systematically go through the Gaza Strip. And again, people will say, well, they destroyed over 60% of the buildings in the Gaza Strip. Yes, all the buildings that were destroyed were buildings that had weapons, tunnels, and terrorism infrastructure. Those are the numbers. The numbers are insane.
No, and it's crazy. I mean, I've seen these buildings. They knocked down the walls facing Israel in order to prepare them for launching rockets at the IDF troops. I mean, they reopened the windows because when you launch a shoulder rocket, there's lots of fire and stuff that go on the other side. So you need to make sure that you clear the area in order to fire this rocket.
From within a building?
Yes, to survive. Because these rockets are not meant to be fired from buildings. So you need to prepare the infrastructure of the building for that. So almost every building that has any sort of view towards Israel was prepared to be launched.
They knocked the walls facing away from Israel.
Facing away towards. You need to have the right angle to fire the rocket, depending if it's a RPG rocket or a sniper.
A larger one,
But you can see the picture, and that's why we can know that this building was set up to be used by terrorists against our troops. It's crazy, and then so we are not really attacking civilian buildings, and we are attacking terrorist infrastructure.
The problem is complicated. It's both.
I know.
It is a building that civilians live in it, and in those civilians' homes are weapon stashes and terrorism tunnels and terrorists hiding within those buildings.
It's even more complicated because who's a civilian when the government is Hamas? So the ministry in charge of construction is owned by Hamas. The members of that ministry are Hamas members, terrorist members. Those who register the buildings are Hamas. Who is paying the salaries are Hamas. So how can you separate the two?
Yeah,
that's the situation.
It's been rough. It's rough on a moral level, even when you consider this. The IDF has had to do a lot of dirty work in fighting in a very complicated situation because of the brutality and the disregard that Hamas has towards the value of human life.
Yeah.
The stories, I don't want to go into this now. It's just like the stories of what they've done to handicapped people, to elderly people, just like putting them in the line of fire intentionally. So there are images of those people being hurt and possibly killed by the IDF. It's just terrible.
I have a personal story about that. In Khan Yunis, where my Yunus was fighting there, in the early parts of this war, we found an elderly woman, Palestinian, that was tied to her bed in the house. While the entire family or the community evacuated to the safe zones, they left her there. In hope.
Left her there to die?
Yeah, to die. Without water, tied. Old lady. Left her there to die, either by an IDF strike or to just, I don't know, die because they didn't want to take her. So we had to release her, and then we gave her some medical first aid assistance. They brought her to the Red Cross. So, like,
horrendous.
Yeah.
So what's left for the IDF to do? So we said we're sort of wrapping up, so to speak, this war so we can move on to the next thing. And you said this, I think we could talk an entire hour just about the economic side of things.
Yeah.
Israel has paid dearly financially for this war. The country has continued to work, and it's continued to work because our government is spending money, keeping things moving, keeping our soldiers well paid. Families that are evacuated, they're not living in tents. They're living in homes and hotel rooms.
Yeah, the government is providing schooling systems for the children in the new areas that they live in now. But I think that, what are the options to move forward? The IDF had a clear plan for the Gaza Strip from day one. So the first plan was a serious heavy maneuver, including airstrikes into the Gaza Strip. Of course, before that, there were just aerial strikes against terror targets in Gaza to prepare the ground for that. Then the second plan is targeted raids against terror cell and terror areas, while maintaining a basic presence in the Philadelphia corridor to separate Hamas from Egypt and monitor the smuggling routes, and also monitoring the presence of IDF troops in the center of the Gaza Strip to prevent Hamas from moving freely.
Yeah, and we've done that. And if you look at like what's left for the IDF to do in the Gaza Strip, we've successfully dissected the Gaza Strip into pieces.
Yeah.
You have the Netzarim corridor that runs through the middle, which has been broadened to the point where you now control a very large sort of patch of land where you can travel in and out safely without having houses or, sort of terrorist nests sitting on the route.
Well, you still have like booby traps, bombs
less.
For the convoys that are still being attacked. Even
again,
recently on the Netzarim.
We haven't evacuated all the civilians. That's part of the issue. We've allowed the Palestinian civilians back. And and it's hard to understand how much of an engineering feat this is, but the Philadelphia corridor that runs from, let's call it the southern tip of the Gaza Strip, all the way west-ish, northwest into Egypt. We've uncovered 150 tunnels there, some of them big enough to drive trucks through. So we've cleared out this enormous engineering infrastructure, and we've done the same thing in pushing away the Hamas homes and stations close to Israeli communities on the Gaza border. So they can't fire missiles and rockets and sniper fire I'm not talking about even military forces, about civilians in Israeli communities within Israel. So we've done a lot to sort of set the ground for the next phase.
Yeah.
And then what's left is to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah, and to figure out who will govern the Gaza Strip.
Exactly.
That's the million-dollar question that nobody really has an answer for now. Because if we give it to Palestinian Authority, it might be the same. If we give it to a different organization or a Palestinian family in the Gaza Strip, who says that they will not be, also approached by Iran and do the same thing under a different banner?
I agree.
All the same banner altogether.
Here's my guess and / hope. My hope is that they replace Hamas. And there's been a lot of talk from the beginning of this war of bringing in an international force, be them Kuwaitis or the Egyptians are not really interested at this point. But international.
I don't blame them.
Neither do I.
That's like kind of the hardest job too.
Yeah, they're like, thanks, but no thanks. But what I think is interesting is whoever that is, as long as they're not Hamas, Hamas can never say that they won. They could say that they had a strategic gain or temporarily win over the Israelis, but they can't say that they won when they're not the ones governing the Gaza Strip. So they're holding on with their with their nails to like whatever they can hold on to there. And my hope is that our government is wise enough, and the international community is wise enough to say, we can't possibly leave these people in power. Let's get them out of the picture.
Find somebody else.
Okay, maybe they stay here physically, part of them, but we demilitarize this area. And by demilitarize, we mean we take all the weapons, and you're not allowed to carry weapons inside the Gaza Strip, and we have an international observer force or something.
Like in Judea and Samaria, basically.
Like it should have been in Judea and Samaria.
Yeah. Well, now we're trying to find all the weapon stockpiles there,
Yeah, I mean, originally that's the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Judea and Samaria was supposed to be governed by the Palestinian Authority, and that didn't really work, but there wasn't much of it. Well, I would say the international community did the opposite of what they were supposed to do in many of the cases. But that really could be the thing where you could say, like, look, Hamas is for now dealt with, and someone else has to deal with governing the population of the Gaza region. And I hope for them that it happens before the winter. I hope that the people of Gaza have homes or something to return to before the winter comes back and the rains of the winter come back.
The cold, yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't want, and I don't think anyone in Israel is calling for the death of anyone else in the Gaza Strip. We want to end this as quickly as possible. We want to be able to deal with the Hezbollah threat. We want to be able to move on with our lives. But Hamas is making it impossible to do that by simply not even showing up
to negotiations. Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk, come and talk. But they don't, because we know that they're just stalling. And that's the feeling that I think all of Israel has. They know that the only reason that they're still there is the hostages. And we want the hostages back as part of the deal. Yeah.
And time's playing to their benefit at this point.
Yes.
They see the international pressure on Israel, and they're sort of hoping that something falls before they do. That there's enough pressure to make Israel stop, that there's enough pressure to make Israel have a ceasefire even unanimously without having, unilaterally, without having Hamas really give back the hostages. And Israel simply can't do that without the hostages because the public pressure won't allow the government to do that. And my guess is, and this is purely a guess, is that we're not going to be able to wait much longer for Hamas. And we're going to have to strike Hezbollah, or strike a combination of Hezbollah and maybe something with an international coalition that has to do with the Iranians, to have some kind of semblance of we've moved on, and then just have a stronghold on and a chokehold, so to speak, on the Gaza Strip until they come to the negotiation table.
Yeah, or to make a final move in the Gaza Strip and kind of find Sinwar. And make kind of a strong attempt to end that in order to move and basically do something about Hezbollah in the north. We can't leave the situation as it is.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What would you tell our people to back at home? Everybody that's praying for Israel.
How do we end this on a positive note?
Yeah. How do you pray for the situation? How do you?
My go-to answer always is when things are too complicated to know what the right thing to do is.
Pray about it.
No, I say pray. The Lord's Prayer. May your will be done.
Yeah.
Whatever God's will is for the situation, let it be done. It's complicated and it's complex. We need wisdom for our leaders. We need wisdom for the leaders of the U.S. and other coalition forces that are sort of fighting together to keep peace in the Arabian Sea, in the Red Sea, in the Mediterranean, in this entire region.
We have a bunch of forces now in this area.
A lot of people, yeah.
Yeah.
And we need wisdom and insight for the leaders of the Arab countries around us, who also, we've talked about this, they face substantial threats.
Yeah.
Think about the leaders of the Egyptian people and the Jordanian people.
Yeah.
Their internal pressures are as severe as ours, or 10 times more on many days.
And personal pressures of just being
100%.
assassinated.
Yes.
Always, from their own people, from the forces of Iran and other areas.
Anyway, so it's interesting, and when you zoom out to see what's happened here, we'll sort of recap on what's happened in this region. We have a couple more minutes to talk. We're at a standstill, it seems. I mean, we're fighting, but we're fighting at a lower intensity. And we've been now, what has it been, 3 weeks? by the time this airs, let's say it's 3 weeks.
Since the assassinations against Yahya Sinwar and the
chief of staff,
chief of staff, yeah.
2.5, yeah, let's say it's 3 weeks by the time this airs.
Yeah.
It will be 3 weeks to the day by the time this airs. 3 weeks of us waiting for Iranians to retaliate. And all that time, Hezbollah continues to fire.
Yeah.
And all that time, the pressure by the Houthis in the Red Sea continues. And all you get is a blip in the newspaper or...
Nobody's talking about that unless there's something big. Yeah.
American Navy shoots down 2 cruise missiles. American Navy shoots down multiple UAVs. Attack on ship prevented, stuff like that.
Terrorists attack American bases.
Yeah.
And
it's not stopping.
Yeah.
And all that time, IDF continues to slowly fight through the Gaza Strip. We keep losing soldiers, they keep losing terrorists. All that time we have, I don't know what the number is today, let's say 60 to 80,000 Israelis who can't go back to their homes in northern Israel and to a lesser degree in the Gaza Strip, in the Gaza area, who can't go back to their homes because their homes don't exist or because their homes are an active war zone in the north. And we're waiting and we're waiting and waiting. And you can't wait indefinitely as a country. You have to take action at some point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the citizens need also a future or plan, because at the moment it's like, okay, we cannot bring you home, but we don't know when and if and what home you'll have left. So yeah, there are a lot of things to pray about, but as you said, I mean, God is in control, and when things are super hard and super tough, you know that He's going to do an amazing miracle.
Yeah.
I mean, just look in history. The stories of the Bibles are not just small miracles. They're huge. Like bringing the people of Israel out of slavery from Egypt into Israel, and on the way opening a sea for us to cross in it, making it super miraculous. So this is kind of the situation that Israel is living in today, and specifically in its modern time. Always being attacked by 7 different countries, 7 fronts, a lot more people than what we have, a lot more, infrastructure. Never makes sense because we don't have any oil or something, fancy here that they can gain from attacking us, making it spiritual war, because that's the only reason that I can make any sense of it. But listen, I'm waiting to see the biggest miracle of this century. Hopefully it will be combined with an understanding that God exists and many people turning to Him in this situation.
I agree. And I think there are 2 sides here. And this is sort of to help someone who's watching this at home. And it can feel so confusing to watch what's happening in the Middle East. Yeah. And it almost, you lose interest because it's complicated and repetitive in its nature. And it never really seems to end in any, in any clear direction. And at the same time, you can look at this differently and say, as you say, zoom out and look at the spiritual aspect. And the spiritual aspect is, you look at Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. You look at Yahya Sinwar, the current and last standing leader of Hamas. Sinwar's last stand. As of
the 22nd.
Let me just check the news website. Still, he's the last one standing. And these are people who have sworn their lives and the lives of their people for death, for resistance, for violence, for radical Islam, and everything terrible that comes with it. And on the other side, anyone around the world who looks at this can say, look, there are people standing up for what's right and what's good. You have the American government who's been incredible as an ally to Israel in this time. And I don't care what people think about the politics of it, everyone in the American government has done more for Israel than ever before in any other war, no exceptions, for the country of Israel, in aid, in prayer, in support, in publicly standing with us, and sending their army to, and Navy, and Air Force, and Marines.
All the stuff that they have.
All the branches of the army to be present in the Middle East. We talked about this extensively last week. They sent all of them to stand with us in this country, and it's been exceptional. So you can look at that and say, look at the Middle East and say, I'm losing hope. And you can also look at it and say, look, I can see that people are standing up for what's right, and we can see the fruit of what's evil, and we know the outcome of the story, and I would just patiently and diligently wait to see how it turns out in a favorable way.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's not much to do other than that.
Yeah. I want to also say something personal to our viewers.
Yeah.
And it's just me and you sitting in the studio and our incredible team, but we love the support that we get from our viewers. And it means more than people can imagine. We get a lot of positive responses on the YouTube channels and on every other outlet. We get emails. We get people reaching out.
Letters.
We get letters.
My wife got a letter, by the way, from a viewer not long ago.
Male or female? Just kidding.
I don't know, actually. I did open. So, she got a letter when I was in Dallas from a viewer saying that we are praying for the women in this war that had to stay at home with the children and take care of all the burden of the family.
You have quite a wife. I agree with that.
Yeah.
And just to say, so that support is so meaningful. People have been donating to what we're doing here at TBN Israel. People have been, it's just an incredible response.
Yeah, and I bet that you see, like these microphones were not here last time that I was here. So thank you for the support, and the money that comes in is used to improve what we're doing. So hopefully my voice is nicer this show than it was
slightly
deeper
and more fitting for radio. Hey, I have a question. Can we talk about merchandise?
Yes, I think we should.
We can tease it.
Yeah.
So coming soon.
Coming soon. I don't know if it's soon. We already talked about it once, but we have a new sponsor for TBN Israel, for the productions that we do. And the sponsor is called Divine Health. Okay, Divine Health, I talked about them on the Boots on the Ground. They are a company that they do supplements that improve your health, improve your thinking, improve your collagen levels in the knees, and all kinds of health stuff that I don't know how to explain.
And okay? I want to say something. TBN is very, very careful about who we recommend and who we talk about in front of other people. And we always try and read, and I love reading the nerdy texts about these kind of things. Yeah. We check and look into the science behind these different things. In my mind, if you want to run the race and live a healthy life, the only way to do that is preventative medicine.
Meaning start eating healthy, living healthy, working out.
Live healthy and supplement. Again, we live Western society, we work too many hours, we spend too many hours on the screen, too many hours in a car, too many hours on a seat in the office.
Yeah.
And there are things in nature that can be used as supplements today that, I don't want to say they reverse aging, but they slow down our aging process. And they keep us healthy, they keep our blood flowing, they keep our nervous system working properly. And some of what we're making available to the TBN audience is exactly that. It's products that really work with the way your body is supposed to work. Yeah. It doesn't chemically manipulate, but it naturally enhances what your body's already supposed to do.
Yeah, definitely. So if you want to get these products, you can do so by going to the link of Divine Health in this description in YouTube, and then purchasing it. It also will help us to create more products, more content here in Israel, to get better gear, maybe more makeup for Mati, stuff like that. So really, we're trying to do more news, more videos, more updates, and it costs money. So we're thinking of many ways in order to be able to facilitate and grow the ministry, and what we're doing basically here, the operation in Israel. So thank you for supporting, and thank you for staying with Israel in prayer. And Mati, I had a good time here.
Welcome back, Yair.
It's good to be here.
It's good to have you in the studio again.
And if you want to receive more updates on Israel, please search for TBN Israel on all of your favorite platforms. No matter where it is on your phone, we are starting to produce more updates on a daily basis.
We need to tell people about that.
What?
That we're producing considerably more content than we used to before.
Yeah, definitely.
If it's Instagram and Facebook, and you can just find on our website, you can find content every day, multiple times a day.
Yeah, because we understand that this war is moving super fast. So a video a day is not enough just to update on what's happening on the situation. So that's what we're doing. And we appreciate all the support, and I hope that you enjoy the content. We also have a newsletter. If you want to subscribe to, you can go to our website at tbnisrael.com. And be part of the family. Send us questions, send us
ideas for shows.
Topics, more ideas for shows. And we'll be very happy to produce these. So until next time, have a great weekend, and we'll see you for another episode of TBN Israel, the podcast.